My wife got G at her bachelorette party, thought I'd never find out. Until I quietly vanished before the wedding, and what happened next left everyone speechless. My name is Marcus Hale, and let me tell you something about the American dream. It's a real son of a bitch when it decides to sucker punch you in the gut. 2 years ago, I was living what every basic dude with a business degree thinks is the perfect life. Hell, I was practically the poster child for having your shit together in your late 20s. I had a software company that was actually making money, not just burning through venture capital like most startups run by guys who think wearing hoodies to board meetings makes them Steve Jobs. No, my company was genuinely thriving, pulling in 7 figures annually, and I wasn't even 30 yet. My parents, God bless their suburban hearts, couldn't shut up about their successful son at every neighborhood barbecue and Christmas party. You know how it goes. Your mom corners some poor soul at the grocery store and launches into this unsolicited biography about how little Marcus built his own company from scratch. Dad would practically burst with pride whenever someone asked what I did for a living. Software solutions, he'd say with this smug grin, like he had any clue what that actually meant beyond computers make money somehow. Then there was my brother Daniel, my supposed ride or die, the guy who knew all my secrets and had my back through every stupid decision I'd made since we were kids, stealing Dad's beer from the garage fridge. We had that bond, you know? The kind where you can call at 3 in the morning and they'll show up with pizza and terrible advice, no questions asked. At least, that's what I thought we had. But the real crown jewel of my supposedly perfect existence was Christina Ward. Jesus Christ, where do I even start with Christina? This woman wasn't just beautiful. Though let's be real, she was a certified knockout with those green eyes and this smile that could probably end wars if deployed strategically. She was the whole package. Smart enough to hold her own in any conversation, ambitious enough to have her own career goals, and funny in that dry, sarcastic way that made me think we were perfectly matched intellectually. For 3 years, we built what I genuinely believed was a real partnership. Not one of those shallow relationships where you're just splitting rent and pretending to like each other's friends. No, this felt like the real deal. We bought a condo together, a nice place with granite countertops and one of those kitchen islands that makes you feel like you're living in a home improvement commercial. We adopted this golden retriever named Charlie, who was basically our practice kid, complete with his own Instagram account, because that's apparently what responsible pet parents do now. Christina and I would spend hours planning our future like we were mapping out a business strategy. Dream vacations to places like Japan and Iceland, conversations about what we'd name our kids, debates about whether we wanted to live in the suburbs or stay urban. She had this way of making even the mundane stuff feel significant. Grocery shopping became this thing where we'd argue about organic versus conventional produce, and somehow she made me care about thread count when we bought sheets. What really got me was how seamlessly she fit into my world and how naturally I slipped into hers. Her parents treated me like I was already family. Her dad would corner me during dinner parties to talk business, and her mom would text me directly about family events. Meanwhile, my own mother had basically adopted Christina as the daughter she never had. They'd go shopping together, share recipes, and have these long phone conversations about God knows what. It was like we'd created this perfect little ecosystem where everyone loved everyone, and the future was just this bright, shiny thing waiting for us to claim it. I thought I was the luckiest bastard alive. Here I was with a successful business, a woman who challenged me intellectually and supported me emotionally, and a family situation that didn't involve therapy or restraining orders. I mean, what more could a guy ask for? We had our shit figured out while most of our friends were still trying to decide if they wanted to be adults or keep pretending that 30 was the new 20. So naturally, when I finally worked up the courage to propose, I went all out. Not because I felt pressured or because it was time, but because I genuinely couldn't imagine my life without this woman in it. I planned this elaborate sunrise hike to her favorite spot in the mountains, complete with a photographer hidden in the bushes like some kind of romantic paparazzi. I had the ring custom designed, spent weeks agonizing over every detail because I wanted it to be perfect for her. When I got down on one knee that morning, with the sun painting the sky all these ridiculous shades of pink and orange, I was absolutely certain we were solid. Rock solid. The kind of solid that survives job losses and family drama and all the other garbage life throws at you. She said yes, obviously, and cried those happy tears that make you feel like you're in a movie. We called our parents right there on the mountain, and everyone was thrilled and started making plans and talking about venues. I thought I'd won the lottery, the relationship lottery that most people spend their entire lives trying to hit. I had found my person, the one who made all the cheesy romantic comedy bullshit actually make sense. The one who made me want to be better without making me feel like I wasn't good enough as I was. The one who laughed at my terrible jokes and called me out on my worst habits and somehow made even mundane Tuesday nights feel like something worth celebrating. But here's the thing about life. It's got this absolutely twisted sense of humor and perfect timing when it comes to destroying everything you think you understand about yourself and the people you love. Just when you're feeling most confident, most secure, most certain that you've got it all figured out, life decides to test exactly how unbreakable your unbreakable really is. And trust me, what I thought was unbreakable turned out to be made of something a lot more fragile than I ever imagined. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At that moment, on that mountain, with that ring on her finger and those tears in her eyes, I genuinely believed we had beaten the odds. I thought we were different, special, destined for one of those love stories that makes other people believe in forever. Turns out I was right about one thing. We definitely were going to be a story people would remember, just not the kind I had in mind. So let me paint you a picture of how quickly your entire world can go from Pinterest perfect to Jerry Springer nightmare, courtesy of one Becca Lewis. Christina's maid of honor and apparently the devil's own event coordinator. If you've ever wondered what pure evil looks like wrapped in a size 2 dress with a sociology degree, let me introduce you to this absolute gem of a human being. Becca had been Christina's best friend since college. One of those ride-or-die friendships that I always respected, even though something about Becca made my skin crawl. She was the kind of person who always had to one-up everyone's stories, who posted inspirational quotes on Instagram while talking shit about people behind their backs, and who somehow managed to make every conversation about herself. But Christina loved her, so I played nice and pretended not to notice when Becca would make little passive-aggressive comments about men in general and me specifically. When it came time to plan Christina's bachelorette party, Becca took charge like she was organizing a military operation. And honestly, I was relieved. Planning parties isn't exactly my forte. I'm more of a order pizza and watch Netflix kind of guy when it comes to celebrations. So when Becca announced she was taking the girls to Miami for a long weekend, I thought it sounded perfect. Sun, drinks, dancing, the whole stereotypical bachelorette experience that would give Christina great stories to tell our future kids. The guest list was exactly what you'd expect. Christina's younger sister Olivia, who was still in that phase where she thought being 23 made her wise about the world, plus 10 other friends from college and work, all of them decent people as far as I knew. Sure, a couple of them were still stuck in that post-college party phase where every weekend was an excuse to blackout drink and make questionable decisions, but nothing too crazy. Or so I thought. The first night went exactly as advertised. I got the obligatory group photos via text. You know the ones, where everyone's holding colorful drinks and making those exaggerated, we're having so much fun faces for social media. Christina looked gorgeous, obviously, wearing this little black dress that made me simultaneously proud she was mine and slightly jealous of every guy who got to look at her. They hit up some trendy rooftop bar, took a million selfies, and probably spent more on bottle service than I spend on groceries in a month. Classic Miami bachelorette bullshit, exactly what I expected. But then came night 2, and this is where Becca's true genius for destruction really shined. See, while the first night was all about public consumption, the Instagram stories, the Facebook check-ins, the carefully curated photos designed to make everyone back home jealous, night 2 was supposed to be private. Very private. The kind of private that requires signing NDAs and turning off location services. Becca had arranged for the party to move from the clubs to this rental house in South Beach. Nothing too suspicious about that. Girls' trips often end up in some ridiculous Airbnb where everyone can spread out and continue the party without worrying about hotel noise complaints or judgmental tourists. What she didn't advertise in the group chat was that she'd also arranged for some entertainment. For male dancers, to be exact. But let's call them what they actually were. Male strippers who specialized in private parties for groups of wealthy women looking to live out their 50 Shades fantasies. These weren't your typical Magic Mike wannabes doing cheesy routines at some dive bar. No, these were full-service performers who came with their own music, their own props, and absolutely zero boundaries when it came to audience participation. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. While I was back home, probably watching some mindless action movie and missing Christina like the devoted fiancé I was, she was discovering exactly what kind of woman she became when nobody was watching. Or at least, when she thought nobody was watching. The drinks were flowing, top shelf everything, because Becca never did anything halfway. Someone had brought party favors of the pharmaceutical variety, because apparently mimosas and champagne weren't enough to lower inhibitions for what Becca had planned. And slowly but surely, my sweet, conservative, let's wait until marriage for the really kinky stuff, fiancé started transforming into someone I wouldn't have recognized if I'd been standing right there. The cheering started innocently enough. A little whooping and hollering as the guys did their choreographed routines, the kind of noise you'd expect from any group of drunk women watching attractive men take their clothes off. But as the night progressed and the alcohol kicked in and whatever else they were taking started working its magic, things escalated quickly. What began as innocent fun, the kind of thing that happens at bachelor and bachelorette parties across America every weekend, turned into something that would make a porn director blush. The dancing became touching. The touching became participating. And my precious Christina, the woman who blushed when we talked about trying new positions, became the star of her own private show while her friends cheered her on like she was competing for Olympic gold in infidelity. The worst part? They filmed everything. Every single degrading moment. Every cheer, every laugh, every second of my fiancé doing things with strangers that she'd never even suggested we try together. Becca, ever the documentarian, made sure to capture it all from multiple angles. For posterity, she probably told herself. For blackmail material, more likely. But here's the real kicker, it wasn't just Christina. This became a group activity, a sisterhood bonding experience where inhibitions were checked at the door and marriage vows were apparently just suggestions. Olivia, sweet little Olivia who still called me future brother-in-law and asked my advice about boys, turned out to be just as enthusiastic as her older sister. Half the bridesmaids joined in like it was some kind of twisted team-building exercise. And through it all, there was Becca, orchestrating the whole thing like a conductor leading a symphony of betrayal. She was the one encouraging, the one filming, the one making sure everyone got their turn in the spotlight. She turned my fiancé's bachelorette party into something that would have made Hugh Hefner proud. The truly beautiful irony? While they were all getting their kicks in Miami, thinking their secrets were safe in that rented house, technology had other plans. Those videos, those precious memories of their girls' weekend, were automatically backing up to the cloud. Our shared cloud storage account, specifically, the same one we used for wedding planning and vacation photos and all those sweet, innocent moments from our 3 years together. So while Christina was living it up in South Beach, discovering her inner porn star with 4 random dudes and her giggling friends, every single second was being preserved for posterity in high definition, just waiting for me to discover it. And discover it I did. You know that moment in horror movies when the protagonist realizes the monster has been living in their house the whole time? That split second when everything they thought they knew about their safe little world gets turned upside down and they're standing there like an idiot wondering how they missed all the obvious signs? Yeah, well, that was me at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, sitting in my home office in my boxers, staring at my laptop screen like it had just grown fangs and started speaking Latin. Christina had gotten back from Miami 3 days earlier, all sun-kissed and glowing, full of stories about overpriced drinks and how Olivia had gotten so drunk she tried to order room service from a lamp. Cute stories. Innocent stories. The kind of harmless bachelorette party tales that make for good dinner conversation with the in-laws. She'd show me photos on her phone, the usual suspects posing at various Miami hotspots, everyone looking appropriately wild but not too wild, like they were auditioning for a reality show about responsible adult women having clean fun. What she didn't tell me about were the other photos. The ones that were quietly uploading themselves to our shared cloud storage while she regaled me with edited highlights of her weekend. See, here's the thing about modern technology. It's designed to make our lives easier by automatically backing up every precious memory. Family vacations, birthday parties, random Tuesday afternoon selfies, and apparently, your fiancé's weekend-long descent into behavior that would make a porn star proud. I'd been working late, trying to finish up some code for a client presentation, when I decided to grab some photos from our Miami trip last year for a slideshow. Just clicking through our shared albums, looking for that perfect sunset shot, when suddenly I'm staring at a thumbnail that definitely wasn't from our romantic getaway. It was Christina, all right. But this wasn't the Christina who worried about whether her dress was too short for church or who made me turn around when she was getting changed. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. Maybe someone else's photos had gotten mixed up with ours through some cloud storage glitch. Technology screws up all the time, right? But then I saw the timestamp. Last weekend, Miami. And then I saw Becca in the background, holding up her phone like she was filming a documentary about the complete destruction of my faith in humanity. I sat there for probably 10 minutes, just staring at that first thumbnail, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. It's funny how your mind tries to protect you from devastating information by simply refusing to accept it. Like, maybe if I just didn't click on that video, it wouldn't be real. Maybe if I pretended I never saw it, I could go back to my nice little fantasy where my fiancée was this sweet, conservative girl who thought missionary position was adventurous. But curiosity and masochism make terrible bedfellows, and eventually I clicked. And then I clicked on another one. And another. Each video was like a fresh punch to the gut, a new revelation about exactly how wrong I'd been about the woman I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. There she was, my sweet Christina, doing things with complete strangers that we'd never even discussed in our most intimate moments together. The worst part wasn't even what she was doing, though trust me, that was pretty fucking devastating. The worst part was how much she was enjoying it. The laughter, the enthusiasm, the complete abandonment of every boundary we'd ever established in our relationship. She wasn't drunk and making a mistake. She wasn't being pressured or coerced. She was having the time of her life, living out some fantasy I apparently never even knew existed. And there were her friends, cheering her on like she was winning Olympic gold in Betrayal. Becca, naturally, was the ringleader, encouraging every degrading moment while making sure to capture it all from the best angles. Even sweet little Olivia was there, laughing and participating like this was just another Tuesday night for the Ward family women. I must have watched those videos for 3 hours, my brain cycling through every emotion a human being can experience in rapid succession. Anger, heartbreak, disbelief, rage, disgust, and finally, this weird, cold calculation that I didn't even recognize as coming from me. It was like watching my personality split in real time, the emotional Marcus getting shoved into a closet while this new, analytical version took control. The next few days were absolutely surreal. Christina went about her normal routine like nothing had happened, chatting about wedding details and asking my opinion on centerpieces while I sat there knowing exactly what those perfectly manicured hands had been doing just days before. She'd curl up next to me on the couch to watch TV, and I'd have to fight the urge to ask her if the guys in Miami had been better than me. She'd kiss me good morning, and I'd wonder if she was thinking about kissing them. But here's the thing that surprised me most about myself. I didn't explode. I didn't scream or throw things or demand explanations. Instead, I became this master actor, playing the role of devoted fiancé while my brain worked overtime planning my exit strategy. We went to dinner with her parents, and I smiled and nodded while her mother talked about how excited she was for the wedding. We met with the caterer, and I pretended to care about the difference between salmon and chicken while mentally calculating how much money I was about to lose on deposits. The performance of my life culminated in what should have been a romantic evening at home. We'd ordered Thai food and opened a bottle of wine, sitting at our kitchen island discussing final wedding details like we were planning a military operation instead of what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. Christina was animated, excited, talking about how perfect everything was going to be while I sat there thinking about how perfect her performance had been in Miami. That's when I decided to have a little fun with the situation. I raised my wine glass and looked directly into her eyes, those beautiful green eyes that I'd thought held nothing but love and honesty, and proposed a toast. To the truth, I said, watching her face carefully, and how it always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep people try to bury it. She laughed, but it was nervous, uncertain. She clinked her glass against mine and took a sip, but I could see the wheels turning behind those eyes. Something in my tone, maybe, or the way I was looking at her. For just a second, I saw a flicker of fear cross her face, like she was wondering if I might know something I wasn't supposed to know. But then the moment passed, and she was back to chattering about flowers and seating arrangements, and I was back to playing my part. The perfect fiancé, blissfully unaware that his entire life was built on a foundation of lies and shared cloud storage. Little did she know, the truth had already found its way to the surface, and I was about to make sure everyone else could see it too. There's something absolutely liberating about burning your entire life to the ground when you know you're doing it for all the right reasons. Most people spend their whole lives trapped by inertia, staying in shitty situations because change is scary and the unknown feels worse than the familiar misery. But when you've got nothing left to lose because everything you thought you had was just an elaborate lie anyway, well, that's when you discover what real freedom feels like. I woke up that Thursday morning at 5:30 a.m., like I had every day for the past 3 years. Christina was still dead asleep next to me, sprawled across her side of the bed in that oversized NYU t-shirt she'd been wearing since college. Her hair fanned out across the pillow like some kind of Renaissance painting. For a split second, looking at her peaceful face in the early morning light, I almost forgot what I knew. Almost let myself slip back into the fantasy that this was still my life, that she was still my person, that we were still building something real together. But then I remembered those videos, and that momentary weakness passed like a bad hangover. I slipped out of bed without making a sound, a skill I'd perfected over 3 years of early morning conference calls with clients on the West Coast, and headed to the shower. As the hot water hit my face, I ran through my mental checklist one more time. Today was the day I became a ghost. I'd spent the last week planning this exit like it was the most important business deal of my life, which in a way, it was. The business deal where I traded my old, pathetic, deceived life for something clean and new. I'd already transferred the important files from my office to a secure server, quietly closed out projects with existing clients, and set up automatic payments for all the bills that would need handling in the coming weeks. I wasn't just disappearing. I was evaporating without leaving a trace of financial chaos behind me. By 6:15, I was dressed and moving through our condo like a man on a mission. I grabbed my go bag from the back of our closet, a simple duffel with enough clothes and essentials to last me a few weeks while I figured out my next move. Everything else, all the accumulated stuff of our shared life, could stay right where it was. I didn't want any of it anymore. Every piece of furniture, every photo, every little decorative item we'd picked out together had been contaminated by the truth of who she really was. Christina never stirred as I wrote out the checks for the wedding vendors. Every single one, paid in full with little notes explaining that the wedding was canceled and they should keep their deposits as compensation for the late notice. The florist, the caterer, the band, the photographer, all of them got their money and their freedom. I wasn't going to let innocent small business owners suffer because my fiancé turned out to be a fraud. The note I left on the kitchen counter was a masterpiece of brevity. The wedding is off. Take care of yourself. 22 words to end a 3-year relationship and a lifetime of shared plans. I probably spent more words ordering coffee at Starbucks, but sometimes the most devastating messages are the shortest ones. No explanation, no accusations, no dramatic flourishes. Just facts, delivered with the emotional warmth of a parking ticket. I locked the door behind me at 7:45 a.m. and dropped my keys in the mailbox. By 8:30, I was at my office, boxing up the last of my personal items while my assistant Rebecca, yes, another Rebecca, because apparently that name was cursed in my life, watched me with growing concern. She kept asking if everything was okay, if there was anything she could do to help, if I was taking a vacation. Sweet kid, probably about Christina's age, still young enough to believe that successful people don't just implode their entire lives on a random Thursday morning. I'm taking an extended break, I told her, which was technically true. An extended break from trusting people, from believing in fairy tale relationships, from being the kind of naive idiot who thinks shared cloud storage is just for vacation photos. Forward any urgent calls to my cell, but otherwise, consider this place closed indefinitely. The moving company arrived at our condo at exactly 10 a.m., just like I'd scheduled. Professional, efficient, and completely indifferent to the emotional weight of what they were packing. My clothes, my books, my computer equipment, my coffee maker. Everything that was purely mine got loaded into a truck and hauled away to a storage unit across town. I watched 3 years of domestic bliss get reduced to boxes and labels, and felt absolutely nothing. By noon, I was standing in the Verizon store, canceling my phone service and tossing my iPhone into the trash like it was contaminated with the plague. The teenage employee looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but he processed the cancellation anyway. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Every digital footprint of Marcus Hale, successful entrepreneur and devoted fiancé, got deleted with the same clinical efficiency I used to debug code. The bank was my next stop, where I closed our joint checking account and moved everything into a new account at a different institution. Clean break. No shared financial entanglements. No way for her to track my movements through credit card statements or online banking. I even changed my direct deposit information for the business accounts, routing everything through a completely separate financial ecosystem. Daniel was the only person who got a heads up, and even that was minimal. A single text from a burner phone, wedding's off. Christina knows why. I'm fine. Don't contact me for a while. My brother, bless his heart, immediately started calling the burner number, but I turned the phone off and threw it in a different trash can. Even Daniel, my supposed ally, was going to have to wait for explanations. The hotel I checked into was deliberately generic. One of those extended stay places that cater to business travelers and people in the middle of life transitions. Clean, anonymous, and staffed by people who were paid to mind their own business. I registered under a false name, paid cash for a week, and settled into my temporary exile like a man entering witness protection. Christina would wake up tomorrow morning to discover that her fiancé had vanished into thin air. No note explaining why, no angry confrontation, no chance to offer explanations or apologies or promises to change. Just absence, sudden and complete, like I'd been raptured while she slept. Her phone calls would go straight to a disconnected number. Her texts would disappear into the digital void. Her emails would bounce back like I'd never existed. For the first time in 3 years, Christina Ward would have to face the consequences of her actions without me there to cushion the blow or make excuses for her behavior. And somewhere in that anonymous hotel room, I smiled for the first time in a week. Saturday morning, June 15th. What should have been our wedding day? What should have been the culmination of 3 years of planning? The day Christina walked down the aisle in that ridiculously expensive dress she'd spent months obsessing over. The day I promised to love and cherish her until death do us part. Instead, I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, nursing my third espresso and putting the finishing touches on what would become the most visited website in Christina Ward's personal history. You know what's beautiful about being a software developer? You learn to think in systems, in cause and effect, in elegant solutions to complex problems. And Christina's little Miami adventure had presented me with a fascinating problem. How do you ensure that actions have consequences when the person committing those actions thinks they've gotten away with murder? How do you make sure the truth gets the audience it deserves? The answer, as it turns out, is surprisingly simple. You build a website. Not just any website, mind you. This wasn't some amateur-hour revenge blog thrown together in a fit of rage. No, this was a professional-grade digital monument to accountability, designed with the same attention to detail I'd put into million-dollar client projects. Clean layout, optimized for mobile viewing, fast loading times, and search engine optimization that would make a marketing guru weep with envy. The domain name was perfect in its simplicity, ChristinaWardTruth.com. Her full name, right there in the URL, so anyone who Googled her would find exactly what they were looking for. I registered it through a privacy service, paid for 3 years up front, and set up hosting on a server farm that could handle serious traffic. Because something told me this site was going to be popular. The homepage was a masterpiece of understated design. Just her name at the top in elegant typography, followed by a simple tagline. The truth about a Miami weekend. Below that, a brief explanation of what visitors were about to see, written in the kind of clinical, professional language you'd find in a corporate press release. No emotional outbursts, no angry rants, just facts presented with the cold efficiency of a coroner's report. The following documentation was automatically uploaded to shared cloud storage during a bachelorette party weekend in Miami, Florida. The materials presented here are unedited and speak for themselves. Viewer discretion is advised. That was it. No accusations, no commentary, no editorial spin. Just a statement of fact that put the responsibility for interpretation squarely on the viewer. Because sometimes the most devastating truth is the one that speaks for itself. The videos were organized chronologically, starting with the innocent group shots from the first night and gradually escalating to the main event. Each file was labeled with just a timestamp and duration, no sensational titles or clickbait descriptions. The content was shocking enough on its own without needing any help from creative marketing. But here's where my professional experience really came in handy. I didn't just dump the raw footage and call it a day. No, I optimized everything. Compressed the files for faster streaming, created multiple resolution options for different connection speeds, and even added closed captions for accessibility. Because if you're going to destroy someone's reputation, you might as well do it with production values. The technical specifications were flawless. SSL encryption for security, CDN distribution for global access, and robust analytics tracking, so I could watch in real time as Christina's dirty laundry got aired to the entire internet. I even set up automated social media sharing buttons, because why should I do all the work of spreading the news when her friends and family could help? The beauty of launching on our supposed wedding day wasn't lost on me. While our guests would have been arriving at the venue, expecting to witness the beautiful union of Marcus and Christina, they instead received a text message with a link to the website and a simple note. This is why there's no wedding today. Short, sweet, and guaranteed to get clicks. I watched the analytics dashboard like a day trader monitoring stock prices. The first visitor hit the site at 10:47 a.m., probably Christina herself, frantically typing her own name into Google after someone forwarded her the link. The visitor count climbed steadily as word spread through our social circles like a digital wildfire. 10 visitors, then 50, then hundreds as people shared the link with friends and family. The geographic distribution was fascinating. Seattle, where we lived. Miami, where her sins were committed. Los Angeles, where her parents had retired. College towns across the country as her sorority sisters got wind of the scandal. The website was going viral in all the worst ways for Christina and all the best ways for truth and justice. By noon, I had confirmation that the message had reached its intended targets. My phone, the new burner I'd picked up just for this occasion, started buzzing with calls from blocked numbers. Christina, probably, trying desperately to reach me from whatever borrowed phone she could get her hands on. Her parents, most likely, calling to demand explanations that would never come. Friends and family members who suddenly found themselves with front-row seats to the destruction of everything they thought they knew about sweet, innocent Christina Ward. The most satisfying part was watching the download statistics. People weren't just viewing the content, they were saving it, sharing it, ensuring that even if I took the site down tomorrow, Christina's Miami memories would live forever in screenshot and screen recording form. The internet never forgets, and I'd just given it something very memorable to hold on to. Around 2 p.m., I got a notification that someone had tried to report the website for hosting revenge porn. Cute attempt, but legally meaningless since all the content had been voluntarily created and automatically shared to a joint account. Christina had essentially published this material herself. I was just providing better distribution and a more user-friendly interface. The comments section I'd included was already filling up with reactions from people who recognized the participants. Former colleagues expressing their shock, family friends asking if this was really the same Christina they'd known since childhood, and college acquaintances sharing their own stories about Becca's previous party planning adventures. The internet had become both judge and jury, and the verdict was unanimous. Guilty as charged. As the sun set on what should have been our wedding night, I closed my laptop and allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. Christina Ward had wanted to have her cake and eat it too, living a double life where she could be the perfect fiancé to my face and a completely different person behind my back. Well, now everyone could see exactly what kind of cake she'd been eating in Miami, and the internet was going to make sure she choked on every bite. You know what they say about throwing a stone into a pond? The ripples keep spreading long after the stone has sunk to the bottom. Well, ChristinaWardTruth.com was more like dropping a nuclear bomb into a kiddie pool, and the shockwaves were absolutely magnificent to watch unfold from my front row seat in digital purgatory. The first domino fell on Monday morning, exactly 72 hours after I hit publish. Christina's boss at Morrison Marketing called her into his office for what I can only imagine was the most uncomfortable conversation of her professional life. See, Christina worked for one of those boutique agencies that specialized in family-friendly brands. Think wholesome breakfast cereals, children's toys, and organic baby food companies. Their entire business model was built on trust, reputation, and the kind of squeaky clean image that doesn't mesh well with employees starring in amateur porn productions. According to my sources, and yes, I had sources, because Seattle's marketing community is smaller than you'd think and gossip travels faster than a Tesla in ludicrous mode, the conversation went something like this. Christina, we've become aware of some materials circulating online that feature you prominently. While we don't typically concern ourselves with our employees' private lives, several of our clients have expressed concern about the association with their brands. Translation: you're fired. And we're going to pretend this is about protecting our clients instead of admitting we're embarrassed to have hired someone who thinks gangbangs make for good bachelorette party entertainment. She was escorted out of the building that same afternoon, her corporate access revoked, her company laptop confiscated, and her dreams of becoming the next big thing in marketing flushed down the toilet along with her reputation. 3 years of climbing the corporate ladder, building client relationships, and positioning herself as a rising star in the industry, all undone by one weekend of poor decision-making and Becca's documentary filmmaking skills. But Christina's professional suicide was just the opening act. The real show started when her parents got wind of what their precious daughter had been up to in Miami. Robert and Helen Ward, pillars of their suburban community and devout members of St. Mary's Episcopal Church, suddenly found themselves fielding phone calls from concerned friends who'd stumbled across their daughter's internet debut. Picture this. You're 68 years old, you've spent your entire life building a respectable reputation in your community, and you're known as the couple who raised that lovely, successful daughter who was marrying that nice young man with the software company. Then suddenly you're getting phone calls from your bridge club asking if you've seen what Christina's been up to online, and your pastor is stopping by for an unscheduled visit to discuss family matters. The conversation between Christina and her parents happened over speakerphone, which I know because little Olivia was there and apparently has trouble keeping her mouth shut when she's been drinking. According to her tearful account to anyone who would listen, their father's exact words were, "We didn't raise you to behave like a common whore, and we won't pretend we did just to spare your feelings." Helen, ever the supportive mother, chimed in with, "How could you do this to our family? How are we supposed to show our faces at church knowing that everyone has seen you doing those things?" And just like that, Christina Ward became an orphan at 27. Her parents didn't just disown her, they actively scrubbed her existence from their lives like she was a stain they were trying to bleach out of the family fabric. Photos came down from the mantle, her childhood bedroom got converted into a craft room, and Christmas card lists were suddenly one name shorter. The social ostracism was swift and merciless. The same community that had celebrated her engagement and planned to attend our wedding suddenly treated her like she was carrying the plague. Former friends crossed the street to avoid awkward conversations. Neighbors who used to chat over the fence suddenly found pressing reasons to go inside whenever she appeared. The local coffee shop where she'd been a regular for years started serving her with the kind of cold efficiency usually reserved for difficult customers who never tip. But the real entertainment value came from watching the domino effect spread to her co-conspirators. Becca Lewis, the mastermind behind the whole operation, found herself dealing with some serious relationship turbulence when her fiancé Michael discovered exactly what kind of maid of honor duties she'd been performing in Miami. Turns out Michael was one of those old-fashioned guys who thought fidelity mattered in a relationship. Imagine that. Their breakup was spectacular enough to warrant its own social media subplot. Michael didn't just dump Becca. He did it publicly, posting a lengthy Facebook status that began with, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them," and ended with, "Some mistakes can't be forgiven, and some trust can't be rebuilt." He even tagged her in it, just to make sure everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. Two of the other bridesmaids, Sarah and Jennifer, both married with children, suddenly found themselves explaining to their husbands why they'd thought participating in a group sex situation was appropriate entertainment for a girls' weekend. Sarah's marriage imploded within a week, her husband filing for divorce and demanding full custody of their twins. Jennifer managed to convince her husband that she'd been too drunk to know what she was doing, but their relationship never recovered from the trust issues that followed. The most satisfying casualty was probably Amanda, the elementary school teacher who'd been so enthusiastic about the evening's activities. Turns out school districts take a dim view of educators who star in pornographic materials, even if it's technically their personal time. Parents complained, the school board got involved, and Amanda's teaching license got revoked faster than you can say moral turpitude clause. Even Olivia, sweet little Olivia who was supposed to be the innocent baby sister, found herself dealing with consequences. Her job at the nonprofit was technically safe. They couldn't fire her for legal activities conducted on her own time, but the whispers and awkward interactions made her work environment so toxic that she ended up quitting and moving across the country to start over somewhere her last name didn't come with a built-in Google search nightmare. The beautiful irony of the whole situation was that they'd all thought their Miami weekend was consequence-free fun. Just girls being girls, letting loose before Christina settled down into married life. They'd convinced themselves that what happened in Miami would stay in Miami, like some twisted variation of the Vegas rule. Instead, their private party became a very public lesson in the fact that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences come with analytics dashboards and global distribution networks. They'd wanted to have their fun and forget about it. I made sure the internet would never let them forget about anything ever again. And through it all, I remained perfectly, beautifully silent. My brother Daniel has always been the emotional one in the family. You know the type, wears his heart on his sleeve, cries at Pixar movies, and thinks every problem can be solved with a heartfelt conversation and maybe some group therapy. So when he finally tracked me down at my temporary hideout 3 weeks after the website launch, he was expecting to find his big brother curled up in a corner somewhere, drowning his sorrows in whiskey and tissues like some kind of country music cliche. Instead, he found me in my hotel room, sitting at a makeshift desk made from the room's tiny table, surrounded by printed documents, legal pads covered in handwriting, and 3 separate laptops running different monitoring programs. I looked up when he knocked, buzzed him in, and went right back to work like he was just another interruption in my busy schedule of orchestrating Christina's complete social annihilation. Jesus Christ, Marcus, he said, staring at my setup like he'd walked into some kind of FBI operation. What the hell is all this? Research, I replied, not bothering to look up from the spreadsheet I was updating with the latest casualty reports from Christina's rapidly shrinking social circle. Due diligence, quality control. Pick your favorite business buzzword. They all apply. Daniel sat down on the bed and watched me work for a few minutes, probably trying to process the fact that his emotionally devastated brother had apparently transformed into some kind of revenge-plotting automaton. He kept waiting for me to break down, to show some sign that I was processing this like a normal human being who'd just had his entire life imploded by the woman he loved. Dude, he finally said, I expected you to be a mess. I thought I'd find you drunk and crying and listening to sad music. This is fucking terrifying. I looked up from my laptop and smiled at him. Not a bitter smile or a sarcastic one, but the kind of genuine, relaxed smile I used to give clients when I was about to deliver exactly what they'd asked for, on time and under budget. Why would I be a mess? I'm handling this exactly like any other business problem. Identify the issue, research the variables, develop a comprehensive solution, and execute with precision. That's when I showed him the files. 3 accordion folders, each one meticulously organized and labeled, containing everything I'd compiled about Christina's Miami adventure and its aftermath. The first folder was labeled Documentation. Every video, every photo, every text message from that weekend, all printed out and organized chronologically with timestamps and participant identification. The second folder was Background Research, and this is where Daniel's eyes really started to widen. See, while everyone assumed I was off somewhere licking my wounds, I'd actually been quite busy. I'd hired a private investigator, a real one, not some sketchy guy from a strip mall, but a former FBI agent who specialized in corporate fraud cases. Professional, thorough, and completely discreet. Within 2 weeks, I had complete background checks on all 4 of the male performers from that night. Names, addresses, employment history, criminal records, and most importantly, medical records. Turns out one of them, a charming gentleman who went by the stage name Thunder, had been carrying a particularly nasty strain of chlamydia that he'd apparently been sharing with clients for the better part of 6 months. "You had her tested?" Daniel asked, flipping through the medical reports. "I had all of them tested," I corrected. Anonymous tip to the health department about potential STD exposure at a private party. They were required to contact everyone who might have been at risk and recommend testing. Very responsible public health policy, don't you think? The third folder was labeled Financial Impact Assessment, because when you're dealing with a business problem, you need to understand the full cost structure. I'd calculated exactly how much money I'd save by canceling the wedding. Venue deposits, catering costs, honeymoon reservations, and about $40,000 worth of other expenses that would have gone towards celebrating a marriage that was already dead before it started. But more interesting was the analysis I'd done of Christina's financial situation post-revelation. Lost income from her terminated employment, legal fees from her attempts to get the website taken down, therapy costs that her insurance didn't cover, and the security deposit she'd lost when she had to break her lease and move back in with friends because her parents had disowned her. "You've been tracking her expenses?" Daniel was looking at me like I'd grown a second head. "Market research," I explained. "If you're going to destroy someone's life, you should understand the full scope of the impact. It's about being thorough." What really freaked him out was the timeline I'd created. A detailed project plan, complete with milestones and deliverables, showing exactly how I'd orchestrated every aspect of Christina's downfall. The website launch had been Phase 1. Phase 2 was the strategic leak to her employer and key social contacts. Phase 3 involved the health department investigation. Phase 4 was ongoing monitoring and documentation of the cascading effects. "This is insane," Daniel said, but there was something like admiration in his voice. "I mean, it's completely psychotic, but it's also impressively organized." "Thank you," I said, genuinely pleased by the compliment. I've always believed that if you're going to do something, you should do it right. Half-assed revenge is just as pathetic as half-assed anything else. I explained to him how I'd approached the whole situation like a product launch. Market research to understand the target audience, content creation and optimization for maximum impact, distribution strategy across multiple channels, and performance analytics to measure success metrics. I even had conversion tracking set up to monitor how many people who visited the website took additional actions like sharing the content or leaving comments. The beautiful thing about treating it like a business project, I told him, is that it removes all the messy emotional variables. I'm not doing this because I'm angry or hurt or want revenge. I'm doing it because it's the logical response to the problem Christina created when she decided to film herself fucking 4 strangers and then lie to my face about it for 3 weeks. Daniel was quiet for a long time, just staring at the organized chaos of my temporary war room. Finally, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Don't you feel anything? Aren't you sad or angry or anything?" I considered the question seriously because Daniel deserved an honest answer. "I felt plenty," I said. "For about 48 hours after I found those videos, I felt everything. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal, confusion, the whole emotional buffet. But then I realized that feelings weren't going to solve the problem. Feelings weren't going to make sure she faced appropriate consequences for her choices. Feelings weren't going to prevent her from doing this to some other poor bastard in the future. So you just turn them off." I redirected them. I corrected, channeled them into something productive. Christina thought she could have her fun and then go back to playing the innocent fiancé. She thought actions didn't have consequences as long as nobody found out. I'm simply correcting that misconception using the most efficient methods available. Daniel left that day looking like he'd witnessed something that fundamentally changed his understanding of human nature. And maybe he had, because what he'd seen wasn't his emotional, heartbroken brother grieving the loss of his relationship. What he'd seen was a businessman executing a flawless project plan with the same precision and attention to detail that had made my software company successful. And the project was running exactly on schedule. A year later, Daniel did something that pissed me off more than anything Christina had ever done. And that's saying something considering she'd literally filmed herself getting gangbanged by strangers 3 weeks before our wedding. My brother, in his infinite wisdom and complete disregard for my explicit instructions, decided that Christina deserved to know what had really gone through my head during those final weeks. Because apparently, Daniel had appointed himself the ambassador of emotional closure, and he thought everyone needed to process their feelings like we were all living in some kind of therapeutic reality show. He told me about it over beers at our usual spot, this dive bar near his apartment where the bartender minds his own business and the jukebox still plays actual CDs. Daniel had that guilty look on his face that I remembered from when we were kids, and he'd broken Mom's favorite vase or forgotten to feed our goldfish for a week straight. The look that said he'd done something he knew I wouldn't approve of, but he'd convinced himself it was for my own good. I met with Christina, he said, not even waiting for me to sit down with my beer. Just dropped it on me like a bomb while I was still shrugging out of my jacket. I stopped mid-motion and stared at him. You did what? She's been calling me for months, Marcus. Months. Leaving voicemails, sending texts, begging me to just talk to her for 5 minutes. She wanted to understand what happened, why you just disappeared like that without giving her a chance to explain. There was nothing to explain, I said, finally sitting down and taking a long pull from my beer. The videos explained everything pretty clearly. High definition, multiple camera angles, excellent audio quality. Really, Becca should have gone into documentary filmmaking professionally. But Daniel wasn't going to be deterred by my sarcasm. He had that earnest, concerned brother expression that meant he was about to try to save my soul whether I wanted it saved or not. She's a mess, Marcus. Like, completely broken. You should see her. She's lost probably 20 pounds. She looks like she hasn't slept in months, and she's basically become a hermit because she can't go anywhere without people recognizing her from your website. Good, I said, meaning it. Actions have consequences. She chose to document her extracurricular activities, and I chose to make sure those documents got the audience they deserved. Natural cause and effect. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Daniel said, leaning forward with that intensity he got when he was trying to make a point. You talk about her like she's a business problem you solved, not someone you loved for 3 years. It's not normal, Marcus. It's not healthy. So I told him what I'd told him a dozen times before, that I was fine, that I'd processed everything in my own way, and that Christina Ward could rot in whatever hole she'd crawled into for all I cared. But Daniel had already made up his mind that I needed intervention, and apparently he thought the best way to provide that intervention was to give my ex-fiancée a detailed psychological profile of my mental state during the worst period of my life. I told her about that night, he said, and my blood went cold. The night you found the videos. How you called me at 2 a.m, completely silent for like 5 minutes before you could even speak. How you described watching those videos like you were giving a police report, no emotion at all, just facts. Christina had sexual intercourse with 4 unidentified males while her friends filmed and encouraged the activity. Like you were reading from a textbook. I wanted to punch him. Actually physically assault my own brother for violating the one confidence I trusted him with during the worst moment of my life. Instead, I finished my beer and ordered another one, because alcohol seemed like a better coping mechanism than fratricide. I told her how you didn't sleep for 3 days, Daniel continued, apparently oblivious to the fact that I was considering whether killing him would be worth the prison sentence. How you sat in your office just staring at spreadsheets, running calculations on how much money you'd lose if you canceled the wedding versus how much you'd lose if you went through with it. How you told me that loving someone who didn't exist was worse than loving someone who didn't love you back. That one hit home because it was true. During those 72 hours between discovery and disappearance, I'd had plenty of time to analyze exactly what had happened to my life. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd planned to marry, the woman I'd built my entire future around, she didn't exist. She was a fictional character that Christina had played for 3 years, a performance so convincing that I'd bought it completely. I told her about the therapy, Daniel said, and now I really did want to kill him. How you didn't go to process grief or anger or any normal human emotion. You went to make sure your exit was emotionally clean, as you put it. How you spent 6 sessions with Dr. Peterson learning techniques for emotional detachment, so you could end the relationship without getting caught up in feelings that might make you change your mind. Dr. Peterson, That smug bastard with his leather-bound notebooks and his carefully neutral expressions, who charged $200 an hour to teach me how to turn off my humanity like it was a software feature I could disable. He'd been fascinated by my approach, treating our sessions like a case study in applied psychology rather than actual therapy. The thing that really got to her, Daniel continued, apparently determined to violate every confidence I'd ever shared with him, was when I explained that you'd decided the opposite of love wasn't hate. That hate would have meant she still mattered to you, still had the power to affect your emotions. You chose indifference because it was the most complete form of erasure you could achieve. Christina had cried when Daniel told her that part. Sobbed, actually, according to his detailed account of their meeting, because she'd finally understood that I hadn't given her the dignity of anger or the respect of a confrontation or even the basic human courtesy of an explanation. I'd simply decided she no longer existed and acted accordingly. She wanted to fight for the relationship, Daniel said. That's what she told me. She said if you'd screamed at her, if you'd thrown things or demanded explanations or given her a chance to grovel and beg forgiveness, she would have done whatever it took to make things right. But you didn't give her anything to fight against. You just erased her. And that, right there, was the point Daniel had missed entirely. Christina didn't deserve a fight. She didn't deserve the chance to explain or apologize or make amends. She deserved exactly what she'd gotten. Nothing. The complete absence of my attention, my emotion, my presence in her life. She asked me if you'd ever loved her at all, Daniel said quietly. If the whole 3 years had been fake, if you'd been planning to leave her anyway. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. That you loved who you thought she was. That you would have died for the woman you thought you were marrying. But that woman never existed, and once you figured that out, there was nothing left to love. Daniel finished his beer and looked at me like he was waiting for some kind of emotional breakthrough, some moment of catharsis where I'd break down and admit that I still cared about Christina and needed closure and healing and all that therapeutic bullshit. Instead, I ordered another round and changed the subject to baseball scores. Because the truth was, Daniel had told Christina exactly what she needed to hear, that the punishment wasn't anger or revenge or even hatred. The punishment was nothing at all. 2 years later, I was living proof that the universe has a sixth sense of humor and impeccable timing when it comes to orchestrating the most awkward possible moments in human existence. There I was, standing in the organic produce section of a Whole Foods in downtown Seattle, debating whether the $30 a pound heirloom tomatoes were worth it for the salad Lauren had requested, when fate decided to play its cruelest joke yet. I heard my name whispered behind me like a prayer or a curse, and I knew immediately who it was without turning around. You know how they say you never forget your first love? Well, you also never forget the voice of the woman who taught you that love is just an elaborate con game played by people who haven't figured out how to be honest about what they really want. Marcus. I turned around slowly, like I was moving through water, and there she was. Christina Ward, or whatever name she was going by these days. The woman who had once been the center of my universe, now looking like a completely different person standing next to the overpriced organic kale. 2 years had not been kind to her, and I found myself conducting an involuntary before and after comparison like she was a cautionary tale about the long-term effects of public humiliation. The Christina I remembered had been radiant, confident, always perfectly put together like she was constantly ready for an impromptu photo shoot. This Christina looked like she'd been living under a bridge for the past 24 months. She'd lost weight, too much weight, the kind that makes a person look fragile instead of fit. Her hair, which had once been her pride and joy, was pulled back in a simple ponytail that screamed, "I've given up on trying to look good." And her clothes, Jesus Christ. Her clothes looked like she'd picked them up from a clearance rack at Target without bothering to check if they actually fit. But it was her eyes that really got me. Those green eyes that had once sparkled with intelligence and humor now looked hollow, haunted, like she'd seen things that had fundamentally changed her understanding of how the world worked. Which, to be fair, she probably had. Having your entire life implode in high definition and then get shared with the internet tends to leave a mark. "Christina," I said, my voice perfectly neutral, like I was acknowledging a casual acquaintance I'd run into at a coffee shop. No warmth, no anger, no recognition of our shared history. Just polite acknowledgement that she'd said my name and basic social courtesy demanded a response. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Actually flinched, like the sound of her own name coming from my mouth was physically painful. Which was probably fair, since I'd made that name pretty goddamn toxic over the past 2 years. "How are you?" she asked, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. The need to have this conversation, to somehow bridge the gap between who we used to be and who we were now, standing in a grocery store treating each other like strangers. "I'm well," I replied, because I was. Better than well, actually. I was thriving in ways I never could have imagined when I was wasting my time trying to build a life with someone who thought fidelity was optional as long as you didn't get caught. She nodded like that was exactly the answer she'd expected and dreaded. "I heard you got married," she said, and I could see her trying to force enthusiasm into her voice. "Congratulations. That's wonderful." "Thank you," I said, adjusting my wedding ring slightly, not consciously, but she noticed anyway. Her eyes followed the movement like it was a knife being twisted in a wound. "Lauren is a surgeon. We met through mutual friends about 18 months ago." The timeline wasn't lost on her. 18 months ago meant I'd found someone new, fallen in love, gotten engaged, and married, all while she was still dealing with the fallout from her Miami adventure. While she was probably still trying to figure out how to rebuild her life from the smoking crater I'd left behind. I'd moved on completely and built something better with someone who understood basic concepts like honesty and commitment. "That's great," she said, and I give her credit for trying to sound like she meant it. "Really great. I'm happy for you." "We're expecting our first child in the spring," I added, because sometimes truth is the most effective weapon available. "Lauren's about 5 months along. We're very excited." That one hit like a physical blow. I watched her face crumble for just a second before she managed to pull herself together and force another smile. Because we talked about kids, back when we were playing house and pretending to plan a future together. We'd even picked out names, had debates about public versus private school, discussed whether we wanted to raise them in the city or move to the suburbs. Now I was having that future with someone else, someone who deserved it, while Christina got to stand in a grocery store and pretend she was happy about it. "I'm glad you found someone," she said, and her voice cracked just slightly on the word someone. "You deserve to be happy." "I am," I said simply, because it was true. I was happy in ways I'd never been with her, even during what I'd thought were our best moments. Lauren and I had built something real, something honest, something that didn't require me to constantly worry about what she was doing when I wasn't around. Christina took a deep breath, like she was preparing for something difficult. "Marcus, I know this probably isn't the time or place, but I need to say something. I need you to know how sorry I am. About everything. About what I did. About how I hurt you about." "Christina," I interrupted, my voice still perfectly calm and neutral. "It's been 2 years. Apologies are for the moment they matter. Right now, they're just words that make you feel better about yourself." She stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "But don't you want to know why? Don't you want me to explain what happened that weekend? What I was thinking? Why I made those choices?" I considered the question seriously, not because I was actually curious about her motivations, but because she seemed to genuinely believe that I might be. "No," I said finally. "I really don't. What you did explained everything I needed to know about who you are. The rest is just details. I never cheated on you before," she said desperately, like that somehow made it better. "Miami was the first time, the only time. I want you to know that." And that, right there, was what made me almost feel sorry for her. Almost. "That actually makes it worse," I told her. "If you'd been cheating all along, at least I could tell myself our entire relationship was a lie and move on. But knowing you threw away 3 years of building something real for one weekend of meaningless fun with strangers? That's not tragic, Christina. That's just stupid." She started crying then, right there in the produce section, tears streaming down her face while other shoppers pretended not to notice the drama unfolding next to the organic spinach. "I fucked up," she whispered. "I fucked up so badly, and I've spent every day for 2 years wishing I could take it back." "I know," I said, and for the first time in the conversation, I felt something almost like sympathy. But wishing doesn't change anything. Actions have consequences, and those consequences don't disappear just because you regret the actions. I grabbed a bag of the expensive tomatoes and put them in my cart, ready to end this encounter and get back to my actual life. But she wasn't done yet. "Do you hate me?" she asked, and I could tell this was the question she'd been building up to, the one that had been eating at her for 2 years. I looked at her one last time, really looked at her, taking in the damage that her choices had caused not just to me, but to herself. "No, Christina," I said. "I don't hate you. Hate would mean you still matter to me. You don't." And with that, I walked away, leaving her standing there among the overpriced vegetables with tears on her face, and the final confirmation that I'd erased her from my life as completely as if she'd never existed at all. Her real name, spoken one last time, closing the file forever. Today, as I sit in my home office overlooking Elliott Bay with a cup of coffee that costs more than Christina probably spends on groceries in a week, I can honestly say that life has a way of rewarding people who understand the difference between justice and revenge. Revenge is emotional, messy, and ultimately unsatisfying because it keeps you connected to the person who wronged you. Justice, on the other hand, is clean, permanent, and allows you to move on with your life while ensuring that actions have appropriate consequences. Seattle turned out to be the perfect place for a fresh start. Clean air, progressive values, and a tech industry that appreciates people who can solve complex problems without getting bogged down in emotional drama. My software company not only survived the transition from my old life, but actually thrived once I stopped dividing my attention between building a business and managing a relationship with someone who thought commitment was more of a suggestion than a binding agreement. The irony isn't lost on me that Christina's betrayal was probably the best thing that ever happened to my career. Without the distraction of trying to maintain a relationship with someone who was fundamentally dishonest, I was able to focus entirely on growing the company. We landed 3 major clients in the first year after I moved to Seattle, expanded our development team by 60%, and opened satellite offices in Portland and Vancouver. Success, it turns out, is much easier to achieve when you're not constantly wondering what your significant other is doing behind your back. But the real victory isn't professional, it's personal. Lauren Walsh walked into my life about 18 months after the Christina debacle, and she's everything my ex-fiancé pretended to be but never actually was. She's a cardiac surgeon at Seattle Children's Hospital, which means she's brilliant, dedicated, and actually saves lives for a living instead of just talking about wanting to make a difference while working in marketing for companies that sell overpriced breakfast cereal to suburban moms. What I love most about Lauren is her complete inability to bullshit. When you spend your days literally holding children's hearts in your hands, you develop a pretty low tolerance for dishonesty and game playing. She told me on our 3rd date that she didn't have time for men who weren't serious about building something real, and she meant it. No mixed signals, no manipulation, no testing me to see if I'd chase her when she pulled away. Just straight talk from someone who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to ask for it. Our son is due in March, a little boy we're planning to name James, after Lauren's grandfather who was apparently some kind of legendary heart surgeon back in the day. I've been to every ultrasound appointment, every prenatal checkup, every preparation class they offer at the hospital. Not because I feel obligated to, but because I'm genuinely excited about becoming a father with someone I trust completely. That's the difference between love and whatever the hell I had with Christina. With Lauren, I never wake up wondering if she's telling me the truth about where she was last night or who she was with. I never have to check her phone or worry about what she's doing when I'm out of town on business. The anxiety that I didn't even realize I was carrying for 3 years with Christina just disappeared. Turns out, when you're with someone who's actually trustworthy, you don't spend your time looking for signs of betrayal. People ask me sometimes if I hate Christina, usually in that concerned tone that suggests they think I'm repressing some deep psychological trauma that's going to surface at an inconvenient moment and ruin my new life. The answer is always the same. Hate requires caring, and I genuinely don't care what happens to her. She's become completely irrelevant to my existence, like a plot line from a TV show I stopped watching years ago. I know she's still in Seattle, probably because she can't afford to move anywhere else after losing her job and burning through whatever savings she had on legal fees trying to get my website taken down. Daniel mentioned seeing her working at some coffee shop in Capitol Hill, which seems fitting somehow. From marketing executive to barista, a natural progression for someone who thought documenting their infidelity was a good idea. The website itself came down eventually, not because of any legal pressure, but because it had served its purpose. Christina Ward's name was permanently associated with her Miami adventure in search engine results. Social media had preserved countless screenshots and recordings, and enough people had downloaded the original content to ensure it would resurface if she ever tried to rebuild her reputation. Mission accomplished. That's the beautiful thing about the internet age. Accountability is permanent. In the old days, people could move to a new town, change their name, and reinvent themselves after making catastrophic life choices. Now, your mistakes follow you forever, which is exactly as it should be. Actions should have consequences, and those consequences should be proportional to the damage caused. Christina didn't just cheat on me. She documented it, celebrated it, and then lied to my face about it for weeks while I planned our wedding like an idiot. She chose to create permanent evidence of her betrayal, so I simply made sure that evidence got the audience it deserved. Poetic justice, delivered through technology and social media virality. The most satisfying part isn't her downfall. It's my complete indifference to it. I don't check up on her, don't ask Daniel for updates, don't Google her name to see if she's managed to crawl out of the hole she dug for herself. She exists in my mind only as a cautionary tale about the importance of thoroughly vetting potential life partners before making long-term commitments. Lauren knows the whole story, obviously. I told her everything on our 6th date, when things were getting serious enough that she deserved to know why I was so careful about trust and commitment. Her response was perfect. So you found out your ex was a liar and a cheater, and instead of wasting years trying to fix her, you moved on and built a better life. That sounds like healthy decision-making to me. No drama, no jealousy, no insecurity about competing with my past. Just a practical assessment from someone who understands that people's previous choices are usually excellent predictors of their future behavior. Some people might call what I did to Christina cruel or disproportionate. I call it educational. She learned that actions have consequences. Her friends learned that enabling bad behavior makes you complicit in those consequences, and any future partners she might have will be able to make informed decisions about whether they want to risk getting involved with someone who thinks fidelity is optional. The world is a slightly more honest place because of what I did, and I sleep perfectly well at night knowing that. Silence has always been the loudest answer. And in that silence, I didn't just win. I built something infinitely better than what I lost. 15 years. 15 years of my life dedicated to Stratos Tech, where I had poured my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights into building something meaningful. I had started as an eager young analyst, working my way up the corporate ladder, sacrificing weekends, birthdays, and even anniversaries to ensure the company's success. I had believed in its mission, in the people, in the so-called teamwork we always preached. I had believed in her. And yet, here I was, seated in a cold, impersonal conference room, the sterile fluorescent lighting above casting an eerie glow on the polished mahogany table. The walls, adorned with corporate jargon posters, seemed to mock me. Across from me sat my wife, Isla, her posture stiff yet exuding a confidence that made my stomach churn. Beside her was Derek, the man I had once mentored when he was nothing more than a junior analyst fumbling his way through spreadsheets. He was grinning, smug, triumphant. I should have seen this coming. Isla folded her arms, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping lightly against her forearm as she spoke. Liam, after 15 years, we're restructuring your position. My boyfriend will take over from here. My wife. Calling this man, the man I had trained, her boyfriend. Announcing my removal from the company I had helped build. I stared at her for a long moment, letting her words settle in. She wanted a reaction. She wanted me to be angry, to demand an explanation, to plead for my position, maybe even for our marriage. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands on the table, and let a slow, deliberate smile spread across my face. I completely understood. Derek slid a manila folder across the table. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. A severance package. A collection of HR-approved farewell documents. Career resources, like I was some intern fresh out of college. And a deadline. I had until Friday to clear out my desk. I lifted the folder, flipping it open casually, scanning the lines without really reading them. My fingers traced the thick paper, my mind already racing past this moment. Isla shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Derek kept his smirk, but I could see the faintest hint of nervousness in his eyes. They had anticipated rage, maybe even a scene. I let the silence stretch a little longer before speaking. I completely understand. Relief. It flashed across their faces like a flickering light bulb. They thought I was defeated. They thought I was letting them win. Oh, if only they knew. If only they knew what I had planned for Monday. I walked out of that stuffy, air-conditioned office, the soft click of the conference room door behind me sounding more like a gun cocking than a mere closing. I moved down the hallway lined with glass windows, my reflection mirroring my calm exterior, a facade that masked the storm brewing inside me. Colleagues passed me by, offering polite nods, oblivious to the betrayal that had just unfolded. I made my way toward my office. No, not my office anymore. I had just 3 days left to exist in this space before being replaced like some outdated software update. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me and exhaling slowly. 15 years. I scanned the room, my gaze landing on the framed awards, the team photos, the piles of notebooks filled with ideas, all testaments to the time, effort, and loyalty I had given this place. Loyalty. What a joke. Isla had been playing me for a fool for God knows how long, and I had been too blind to see it. How long had she been involved with Derek? How long had they been plotting this takeover? I picked up a small picture frame from my desk. A photo of Isla and me, taken years ago at a company retreat. We had been happy then, or at least I had been. I stared at her smile, looking for the cracks, the hidden deception I had missed. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing on my chest, threatening to suffocate me. But I refused to let it. This wasn't defeat. No, this was merely the opening move in a much bigger game. I reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Jonas Caldwell, Titan Dynamics, Stratos Tech's biggest competitor. I pressed dial, lifting the phone to my ear, my heartbeat steady, my voice unwavering. Jonas, it's Liam. I think it's time we talk. A pause. Then, a chuckle. I was hoping you'd call. I smiled. Let the games begin. I sat in the dimly lit corner of Marcel's Steakhouse, a quiet, upscale restaurant where the elite came to drink whiskey and make power moves. The air smelled of aged bourbon, sizzling ribeye, and the intoxicating scent of high-stakes negotiations. Across from me sat Jonas Caldwell, the CEO of Titan Dynamics, Stratos Tech's biggest competitor. He was a man of presence, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from years of crushing his enemies in boardrooms. He smirked as he swirled his drink, letting the silence between us stretch. So, he finally said, setting his glass down, they really thought they could just shove you out the door and steal your work? I nodded, my fingers tapping lightly against the glass of whiskey in front of me. They planned it for months. Isla and Derek, they had it all mapped out. Replace me, claim my work, and push their agenda forward. I took a sip, the burn of the liquor doing nothing to dull the simmering anger in my chest. The only problem? They never filed the patent on my system. Jonas leaned forward slightly, interest flickering in his sharp blue eyes. Your predictive analytics model, the one Stratos Tech was about to integrate into their next-gen AI platform. I nodded. The very one. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. Let me guess, they were waiting to fire you first before filing. Thought they could cut you out completely and claim it under the company's IP. Exactly. Jonas exhaled a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. Amateurs. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were all my notes, documentation, and the formal patent application papers, which I had never submitted under Stratos Tech's name. Instead, I had quietly prepared it under my own. I slid the folder across the table. Titan Dynamics can have exclusive rights to it. On one condition. Jonas raised an eyebrow. And what's that? I leaned in, lowering my voice. I don't just want a job, Jonas. I want revenge. I want Stratos Tech to burn for this betrayal. I want Isla and Derek to feel the ground disappear beneath them. I want to make sure that when Monday morning rolls around, they realize they destroyed themselves the moment they underestimated me. Jonas grinned, flipping open the folder and scanning the documents. He let out an appreciative hum. You know, I like the way you think, Liam. He pulled out a contract and a pen, sliding them toward me. I picked up the contract and scanned the details. 7 figures signing bonus. Senior leadership position. Full control over my technology. It was more than just a deal, it was a power move. I lifted the pen, poised over the signature line. Derek is about to walk into hell on Monday. Jonas chuckled, raising his glass. Let's make sure he never forgets it. I signed. As I drove home, my mind raced through the domino effect I had just set in motion. Step 1. Secure my position at Titan Dynamics. Done. Step 2. Ensure that Stratos Tech loses the foundation of its upcoming tech launch. In progress. Step 3. Make Isla and Derek realize they have destroyed themselves. Coming soon. The thought alone was enough to make the bitter taste of betrayal fade just a little. When I pulled into the driveway of my home, a home that no longer felt like mine, I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The house was dark, except for the warm glow of the living room light. Isla was waiting. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. She was sitting on the couch, a wine glass in her hand, looking as if she had already celebrated my downfall. She glanced at me over the rim of her glass, an amused glint in her eyes. Did you have a good last day, sweetheart? I kept my expression neutral. It was enlightening. She smirked. I know it must be hard, but trust me, this was for the best. She leaned forward, setting her glass down. Derek is bringing a new vision to the company. Something fresh. You were holding Stratos Tech back. I almost laughed at the audacity of it. She had spent years enjoying the life my career had provided. The lavish vacations, the cars, the house. And now she sat here, trying to convince me that I had been the problem? I moved toward the kitchen, pouring myself a drink, making sure my back was to her when I spoke. You really believe that, don't you? Of course. She exhaled, standing and making her way toward me. Liam, you're a great guy, but you don't see the bigger picture. Derek does. He's ambitious. I turned to face her, cutting her off with a smirk. You're betting everything on him, aren't you? She hesitated, but only for a second. Derek is the future of Stratos Tech. He has everything lined up. His plans, his leadership, his stolen ideas? I interrupted, watching her smile falter. His plan to replace me using the work I built from the ground up? Isla narrowed her eyes. That's how business works, Liam. You should know that by now. I let the silence stretch between us, savoring it. She had no idea that her entire world was about to come crashing down. I set my drink down and smiled. You're right, Isla. Business is business. She relaxed, mistaking my agreement for defeat. She had no idea what was coming. Later that night, I sat in my home office, my laptop glowing softly in the dark. I fired off a few quiet messages to my team, my closest allies. They deserved better than to be left behind. One by one, they replied, I'm in. If you're leaving, I'm leaving too. Stratos Tech is nothing without you. Let's do this. By Thursday evening, I would have secured new jobs for every single one of them at Titan Dynamics. I wasn't just walking away. I was taking my team with me. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The betrayal they had orchestrated would be nothing compared to the devastation I was about to unleash. They thought Friday was the end of my story. They had no idea that Monday would be the beginning of their nightmare. The office felt different when I walked in on Wednesday morning. It was as if the walls had absorbed my resentment, the air carrying the weight of the betrayal. I moved through the halls with a quiet, purposeful stride, ignoring the polite nods and forced smiles from my colleagues. They didn't know yet. By Monday, they would. I reached my office and shut the door behind me, leaning against it for a moment. My gaze swept over the space. 15 years of memories contained within these four walls. The framed awards, the meticulously organized files, the shelves lined with books on machine learning and predictive analytics. All of it had once represented progress, innovation. Now, it was just a prison I had been forced to escape. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, my fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. There was work to do. Phase 1, quiet conversations. I started with personal emails. Not formal resignation notices, not yet. These were private messages, carefully worded, sent only to the people I trusted. My team, the brilliant minds who had spent the past 5 years helping me build the predictive analytics system that Stratos Tech was about to lose. I need to talk. It's about what's coming. Confidential. Let me know if you're free today. One by one, the replies came in. What's going on? You have my attention. If this is about Derek, say no more. I'm in. I smirked at that last one. They already knew. They had felt the shift the moment Derek started maneuvering for control. They had watched as I was slowly pushed out of critical meetings, my input dismissed, my ideas rebranded under someone else's name. They had been waiting for this moment. By lunchtime, I had private calls scheduled with every single one of them. I stepped out of my office, making my way toward the rooftop lounge, the one place in this entire building where I could think. The view stretched over the city, a sea of high-rises and ambition. I leaned against the railing, gripping my coffee cup as the first call connected. Liam, Noah, my lead developer, greeted me. What's going on? I didn't waste time. I'm leaving. A pause. Then, I figured. When? Friday. Another beat of silence. And the system? I smirked. They won't have it. A slow chuckle. Tell me how I can help. I laid it out for him. Titan Dynamics had secured the rights to my system. Stratos Tech wouldn't be able to launch without violating patents they didn't own. I was offering my team a lifeline, new jobs at Titan, higher salaries, better benefits, and, most importantly, the chance to work for a company that actually valued them. Noah didn't even hesitate. I'm in. One by one, the conversations followed the same pattern. No one refused. By the time I returned to my office, my entire team was ready to jump ship. Phase 2, setting the stage. With my team secured, I turned my attention to controlling the fallout. I began quietly backing up all my files, ensuring I had documentation of every line of code, every algorithm, every data model. Not to steal anything. No, that wasn't necessary. The true power wasn't in what Stratos Tech currently had. It was in what they didn't have. And after Friday, they would have nothing. I spent the afternoon drafting a formal report detailing my system's limitations, an internal document that Stratos Tech had ignored when Derek decided to claim it as his own. It explained, in painful detail, how the predictive analytics model required my proprietary framework to function. Without it, their launch would fail. And once I was gone, no one would know how to fix it. Phase 3, the final move. By Thursday, whispers had started. People noticed the closed-door meetings, the hushed conversations, the looks exchanged between me and my team. I was sitting in my office when Isla walked in. She didn't knock. She never did. I didn't look up. Can I help you? She sat down across from me, her legs crossed, the same smug confidence she'd worn in the conference room still lingering in her posture. You're taking this well, she remarked, tilting her head. I expected more resistance. I closed my laptop, finally meeting her gaze. What would be the point? Her lips curled into a satisfied smile. Exactly. It's business, Liam. You understand that, don't you? I held her gaze, letting the silence stretch between us. Then I smiled. Oh, I understand completely. She relaxed, exhaling in relief. That was her mistake. She thought I had accepted it. That I had come to terms with my demotion, my replacement, my betrayal. She had no idea that by Monday morning, she and Derek would be standing in the middle of a crumbling empire, grasping at the ruins of their own arrogance. She stood, smoothing down her dress. Good luck with whatever comes next, Liam. I watched her walk away, my smirk deepening. Luck? I wouldn't need it. Thursday evening, the last goodbye. As the sun set, I sent one final message to my team. Tomorrow, we walk out together. They responded almost instantly. See you in the morning. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The storm was coming. The wheels were already in motion. Tomorrow, I would pack up my office, shake hands, pretend to be grateful for the opportunity. And on Monday, they would realize they had destroyed themselves. Friday arrived with a deceptive calm. I woke up early, as if it were just another normal day. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting golden streaks across the bedroom floor. And for a moment, I let myself absorb the stillness. This was the last day I would step into Stratos Tech as their employee. As I got dressed, I glanced over at Isla, who was still in bed, her face relaxed in sleep. She had no idea that her entire world was about to tilt, that the very foundation she and Derek thought they had secured was already crumbling beneath them. I straightened my tie, buttoned my cuffs, and looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't leaving defeated. I was walking out with my pride, my team, and my legacy intact. By Monday, Stratos Tech would be on fire, and they'd have no one but themselves to blame. The final goodbye. When I arrived at the office, the energy in the air was different. My colleagues greeted me with the usual pleasantries, but there was something else in their eyes. Curiosity, confusion, maybe even pity. No one openly mentioned my departure, but the way they looked at me, the way they hesitated before speaking, told me everything. I took my time packing, not because I was sad, but because I wanted them to see it. I placed each framed award into my box, the ones that recognized the breakthroughs I had pioneered. I pulled down my whiteboard, filled with notes, diagrams, blueprints for a future Stratos tech would never see, and wiped it clean. By noon, my office was empty. Just as I was sealing the last box, I heard a familiar set of footsteps. I didn't even have to look up. Isla stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a glassy smile on her lips. Too satisfied, too smug. She tilted her head slightly, feigning sympathy. I hope there are no hard feelings, Liam. It's just business. I turned to her, letting my eyes linger on her face, memorizing this moment. Because soon, she would realize just how expensive this business decision was. I smiled. Oh, of course. Business is business. She relaxed, as if she had just dodged a bullet. She had no idea the gun was still loaded. The walkout. At 3 p.m. I walked through the halls, box in hand, passing by people who barely met my gaze. They thought they were seeing the end of my story. They had no idea they were witnessing the beginning of theirs. As I stepped toward the exit, I heard shuffling behind me. I turned. One by one, my team emerged from their offices, each carrying their own boxes. The quiet murmurs in the hallway turned into hushed whispers. Then the whispers turned into shock. The security guard at the entrance hesitated, looking between us and his walkie-talkie. He wasn't trained for this. I stepped through the doors and into the crisp afternoon air. My team followed. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. By Monday, the world would say it for us. The weekend before the storm. I spent the weekend preparing. Not for the loss. I had already won. I met with Titan Dynamics' executive team. We strategized. We finalized press releases, legal countermeasures, and a timeline for rolling out my technology, Stratos Tech's so-called future, under a different name, under my control. Jonas Caldwell grinned as he raised his glass. Monday's going to be a fun day. I smirked. For us. Not for them. Sunday night. The last message. At 9 p.m., as I poured myself a drink, my phone buzzed. A text from Isla. Liam, I just want to say, I hope we can move forward without bad blood. I took a sip of my whiskey, letting the message sit there, unread. She was trying to smooth things over, to ensure she could control the narrative before Monday. She had no idea that by 9 a.m. tomorrow, her name would be tied to a disaster. I placed my phone face down. I'd let her wait. Because tomorrow, she would understand the price of betrayal. Monday arrived with the precision of a well-set trap. I woke early, my mind clear, my hands steady. The house was silent except for the faint rustling of the curtains as the morning breeze seeped through the open window. Today was the day. As I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie, I could feel it, the shift in power, the weight of the moment pressing against my chest. Stratos Tech thought they had won. Isla and Derek believed they had finally erased me. By the end of the day, they would realize they had set fire to their own kingdom. I checked my phone. 7 a.m. Right on schedule. A notification blinked at the top of my screen, Titan Dynamics press release. I tapped it open, my lips curling as I read the headline. Titan Dynamics acquires exclusive rights to groundbreaking predictive analytics technology. Welcomes Liam Carter as Chief Technology Officer. A full-page announcement. My name, my title, my creation, and Isla and Derek? They weren't even footnotes. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. The world was about to see the truth, who the real architect of success had been all along. I grabbed my briefcase and headed downstairs. I wanted to be at my desk when the storm hit. 7:30 a.m., the first shockwaves. As I settled into my new office at Titan Dynamics, my phone started buzzing. Texts, emails, missed calls, former colleagues, friends, even journalists. I ignored most of them. The real fun was just beginning. Then, at 9 a.m., my phone vibrated with a message that made me chuckle. Text from a former colleague. Liam, it's absolute chaos here. What did you do? I smirked, typing back. I took back what was mine. 9:15 a.m., the mass exodus. Back at Stratos Tech, the first signs of collapse began to show. My former team, the brains behind the entire system, had timed their resignations perfectly. One by one, emails landed in Stratos Tech's inbox. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position at Stratos Tech. 6 key engineers. All gone in the span of 10 minutes. And just like that, Stratos Tech's entire predictive analytics division ceased to exist. 9:30 a.m., the executive panic. The first real sign of trouble came when a call from Stratos Tech's executive office reached Titan Dynamics. I picked up, keeping my voice calm, professional. A nervous, trembling voice filled the line. "Liam, it's James from legal. We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair. "About what?" There was a pause. Then, hesitantly, "About your system." I smiled. There it was. I let the silence hang before responding. "I no longer work for Stratos Tech, James. You'll have to take it up with my new employer." Another pause. Then, almost a whisper. "You know they never filed the patent, right?" I let out a slow breath, as if I were hearing it for the first time. "That's unfortunate. You're not going to help us?" I chuckled. "James, I don't work for you anymore. You should probably talk to Derek about that." I ended the call. Let them drown. 10 a.m. Isla's realization. By now, Stratos Tech's investors were calling. The predictive analytics system, the one Derek and Isla had promised would revolutionize the industry, was suddenly off limits. Panic spread like wildfire. Stock prices wobbled. Clients started pulling out. And then, Isla finally texted me. "Liam, we need to talk. There's a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. As if she hadn't sat across from me, smug and satisfied, telling me I was being replaced by her boyfriend. As if she hadn't signed off on my termination, thinking I would go quietly. I stared at the message for a long moment before locking my phone. Let her sweat. 11 a.m., Derek's collapse. While Isla tried to contain the damage, Derek was crumbling in real time. At Stratos Tech's Monday morning leadership meeting, he had nothing to present. The system, the very thing he had promised the board, was now gone. Executives demanded answers. Investors wanted explanations. By noon, Derek was visibly shaken, scrambling for solutions he didn't have. I pictured him standing in that conference room, sweating through his overpriced suit, realizing he had gambled his entire future on a stolen idea that was never really his. Poetic. 2 p.m., the lawsuit threat. Stratos Tech's legal team finally made their move. A lawyer from their side called Titan Dynamics, threatening legal action. Jonas handled it personally. After listening to their panicked accusations, he simply replied, "Let them try." They had no claim, no contract, no patent, nothing. By the end of the call, their lawyer's voice was shaking. Stratos Tech was out of moves. 4 p.m., the death spiral begins. Stratos Tech's stock plummeted. 15% drop by close of business. Clients demanding refunds. Investors pulling out. And by evening, the board finally realized who was responsible for this disaster. By Friday, Isla and Derek would be jobless. 6 p.m., Isla's desperation. My phone buzzed again. "Isla, Liam, please. We can work something out." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. She was trying to salvage what was left. Trying to bargain. Trying to undo what couldn't be undone. I typed a single word. "No." Then, I locked my phone and took a deep breath. Victory tasted sweet. The inevitable happened by Tuesday morning. Stratos Tech's top executives were in full-blown panic mode. Investors had started demanding explanations as reports of my departure and Titan Dynamics' acquisition of my system spread through the tech industry. And at the center of it all, Isla and Derek, sinking deeper into the disaster they had created. 10:30 a.m., the desperate strategy meeting. Inside Stratos Tech's glass-walled boardroom, a chaotic emergency meeting was underway. Derek, the supposed future of the company, sat at the head of the table, frantically flipping through reports. His once cocky posture was now rigid, his forehead slick with cold sweat. Isla sat beside him, her arms folded, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her fear. Across from them, Stratos Tech's CEO, Victor Langston, fixed them with a stare sharp enough to slice through concrete. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "You two fired the man who built our key technology, didn't file the patent, and now Titan Dynamics has full control over it." Silence. Then, Isla spoke. "We." Victor cut her off with a single raised hand. "Don't. Just don't." One of the financial directors cleared his throat. "Sir, as of this morning, we've lost an additional $125 million in stock value. Clients are terminating contracts. Our entire predictive analytics division is essentially gone." Victor rubbed his temples, his jaw tightening. And you're telling me that there is nothing we can do to reclaim this system? Derek swallowed hard. We can try negotiating with Liam. Maybe there's a way to. Victor's head snapped up, his expression ice cold. Negotiate. He laughed bitterly. You stabbed him in the back in the most humiliating way possible, and now you think he'll sit down with you over coffee and give you back his life's work. Derek had no response. He was drowning. And Isla? She was starting to realize just how badly they had miscalculated. 11 a.m., Isla's plea. Back at Titan Dynamics, I sat in my sleek, new office, sipping my coffee as I watched the chaos unfold in real time. My phone buzzed. Isla, Liam. We need to talk. Please. I set the phone down and smiled. She was cracking. This was no longer the smug woman who had fired me with her boyfriend at her side. This was someone grasping for a lifeline in an ocean of consequences. I let the message sit for a full 10 minutes before responding. I don't see what we have to discuss. A moment passed. Then another. Then, a longer message came through. Liam, I know you're upset. I know things got out of hand. But you can't seriously want Stratos Tech to go under. Think about what we built together. Think about all the people who will suffer if this continues. Oh, there it was. Not an apology. Not remorse. A guilt trip. A desperate attempt to make me feel responsible for her failure. I chuckled softly, shaking my head. She still thought I was the same loyal, devoted husband who would always clean up her messes. She was wrong. I took my time typing my response. You made your choice, Isla. Now live with it. 12:30 p.m., the lawyers get involved. By noon, Stratos Tech's legal team had reached out to Titan Dynamics. A formal letter, packed with legal jargon, filled with empty threats about intellectual property rights they didn't actually own. Jonas, my boss, read through it and snorted. This is adorable. He tossed the papers onto his desk and leaned back in his chair, smirking. They have no case. We have the patent, we have the resignations, and we have the contracts. Let them try to fight it. I chuckled, sipping my coffee. They're panicking. Jonas grinned. Good. Let them sweat. He pulled out his phone and made a single call. Within an hour, Titan Dynamics released a public statement confirming our exclusive rights to the predictive analytics technology. And just like that, Stratos Tech's stock took another dive. 2 p.m., the internal collapse. By mid-afternoon, Stratos Tech was in shambles. Executives were questioning Isla and Derek's leadership. Board members were furious. And the financial loss? Growing by the minute. Inside Stratos Tech's main conference room, Isla sat with her head in her hands while Derek stared blankly at his laptop screen. Their perfect plan, reduced to ashes. That was when Victor made his decision. He stood at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. This can't continue. Derek perked up. I know. You're fired, Victor interrupted. The room fell silent. Derek blinked. What? Victor turned to Isla. Both of you. Effective immediately. Isla's face paled. Victor, you can't. I just did. He turned to the HR director. Send security to clear out their offices. Derek shot to his feet. You're making a mistake. Victor's voice was calm, but final. No, Derek. The mistake was ever thinking you were qualified to take Liam's place. Isla's eyes darted between Victor and the other executives, looking for support. There was none. Their careers were over. 6 p.m., the final message. Back at home, I poured myself a drink, watching the city lights flicker through my window. My phone buzzed again. Isla, Liam, please. I lost everything today. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just certainty. This was the price of betrayal. This was the weight of their choices finally catching up to them. I lifted my glass, took a slow sip, and typed my final response. No. Then, I deleted her number. Some losses are permanent. Tuesday morning came with a sense of finality. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't wake up as an employee of Stratos Tech. I wasn't rushing through the motions of preparing for another day at a company that had betrayed me. Instead, I was exactly where I needed to be, in control. As I walked into my new office at Titan Dynamics, the air felt lighter. There was no tension, no weight of an impending knife in my back. Just opportunity. I sat at my desk, reviewing the latest stock reports. Titan Dynamics, up 12%. Stratos Tech, down another 9%. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the numbers sink in. The company that had fired me, that had smugly handed over my career to a fraud was falling apart in real time. And I didn't have to lift another finger. The damage was already done. 9 a.m., Stratos Tech's breaking point. Across the city, inside the Stratos Tech headquarters, chaos reigned. The board of directors had gathered for an emergency meeting, but the mood in the room was grim. Without Isla and Derek, they were left scrambling for leadership. But the real problem? The clients were leaving. One by one, major contracts were being canceled, clients citing lack of confidence in the company's future. By the end of the morning, Stratos Tech's quarterly revenue projections had dropped by over $200 million. Investors were furious. The stock was in freefall. And in the midst of it all, a rumor started spreading through the building. Titan Dynamics was planning a buyout. It was unconfirmed, but the very idea sent a shockwave through Stratos Tech's remaining employees. Because if it was true, it meant Stratos Tech was officially finished. 10:30 a.m., the call from Victor. My phone rang. I already knew who it was before I answered. Liam, came Victor Langston's voice, Stratos Tech's desperate CEO. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, smirking. What about? A heavy sigh came through the receiver. You know exactly what about. I let the silence stretch, enjoying his discomfort. Liam, he continued, we're willing to negotiate. We need that system back. If there's a way to. I cut him off. There isn't. He hesitated. Liam, let's be reasonable. I let out a quiet chuckle. Reasonable. I repeated. You mean like when Isla and Derek fired me and tried to steal my work? Victor's silence spoke volumes. You had your chance, I said, my voice calm but firm. Stratos Tech bet against me. And now you're losing. That's business, isn't it? Victor exhaled sharply. So that's it. You're just going to watch us crash. I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. He started to say something else, but I ended the call. Let them fall. 12 p.m., the final blow. At noon, Titan Dynamics held a press conference. Jonas Caldwell took the stage, standing behind a sleek podium as cameras flashed. The room was filled with journalists, tech insiders, and financial analysts, all eager to hear what he had to say. And what he said changed everything. Titan Dynamics is proud to announce that we have successfully acquired the exclusive rights to the most advanced predictive analytics technology in the industry, Jonas stated. This is a new era for innovation, and we're excited for what's next. Then, he glanced at me, smiled, and gestured toward the audience. And to lead this new era, I'd like to introduce our new Chief Technology Officer, Liam Carter. The crowd erupted in applause as I stepped onto the stage. I took my time before speaking, scanning the room, letting the moment sink in. Then, I leaned into the microphone. This is just the beginning. 2 p.m., the collapse of Stratos Tech. By mid-afternoon, the stock market delivered the final blow. Stratos Tech stock, down 22%. Major investors pulling out. CEO Victor Langston rumored to be stepping down. In less than 48 hours, Stratos Tech had gone from industry leader to a company on the verge of imploding. And the cherry on top? By 3 p.m., Titan Dynamics officially announced that it was exploring the possibility of acquiring Stratos Tech at a reduced valuation. In other words, we were about to buy the company that fired me. 6 p.m., Isla's final message. I was at home, sipping whiskey, when my phone buzzed. A message from Isla. Liam, can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened crashing down all at once. This woman, who had once been my wife, my partner, had been so eager to erase me from her life. She had sat in that conference room, looking me in the eye, smug and victorious, believing she had won. And now? Now she was sitting in the wreckage of her own making, reaching out to the very person she had betrayed. I typed a response. There's nothing left to talk about. Then, I deleted her number. 9 p.m., the end of an era. I sat outside, watching the city skyline, whiskey glass in hand. This was it. Stratos Tech, the company I had built my career around, the company that had thrown me away like I was nothing, was finished. And me? I had won. Not just in terms of career, success, or reputation, but in something far more important. I had proven them wrong. Isla and Derek had thought I was replaceable, that I would fade into obscurity while they took credit for my work. But instead, they had destroyed themselves. I took one last sip of my drink, savoring the taste of victory. Then, I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in years. This chapter of my life was officially closed. The first thing I did the next morning was check the financial reports. It was routine at this point, a habit honed from years of leading projects and managing high-stakes decisions. But today, it wasn't just about monitoring trends. Today, it was about witnessing the wreckage of Stratos Tech in real time. The numbers were brutal. Stratos Tech stock had plummeted another 14% overnight. Clients had formally withdrawn from multiple contracts. Investors were publicly demanding leadership changes. It was a slow-motion collapse, a corporation rotting from the inside out, and I was watching from the front row. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest as I scrolled through the latest news articles. One headline stood out. Stratos Tech faces uncertain future after CEO shakeup and executive firings. I smirked. Victor Langston, Stratos Tech's former CEO, had officially resigned late last night. That meant leadership was in free fall, and with no clear direction, the company was spiraling toward a full-blown disaster. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. This was it, the moment of absolute collapse. And then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. I let it ring a few times before answering. Liam, a familiar voice said. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but please, just listen. Isla. I didn't say anything. I just let the silence stretch, forcing her to feel every ounce of discomfort. She cleared her throat, trying again. I know things ended badly. I know you're angry. I chuckled. Angry? That wasn't the right word. I was done. I made mistakes, she continued. I see that now. Do you? I asked, finally speaking. Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who just realized she bet on the wrong horse. She exhaled shakily. Liam, I lost everything. I could hear the rawness in her voice, the stress, the exhaustion. She was desperate. She deserved every second of it. I waited, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. When I didn't respond, she pressed on. I thought things would turn out differently. I laughed. Yeah, I bet you did. There was a pause. Can we meet? She finally asked, voice soft. Please. I didn't even hesitate. No. She inhaled sharply, like the word had physically hurt her. Liam, you made your choice, Isla, I said coldly. You and Derek thought I was disposable, that I'd fade into nothing while you two celebrated. And now that you've burned everything down, you think I'd want to sit across from you. She was quiet. Good. Let her sit with that. You fired me. I continued, my voice level. You replaced me. You betrayed me in the most humiliating way possible. So tell me, why the hell would I ever do you a favor? She sniffled. Was she crying? I almost laughed at the irony of it. I had spent months feeling like I had lost everything. My job, my marriage, my sense of stability. Now she was the one drowning. I gave her one final silence before saying, don't call me again. And then I ended the call. 12 p.m., the final offer. By noon, Jonas Caldwell, my new boss at Titan Dynamics, called me into his office. I stepped inside, taking a seat across from his massive desk, watching as he leaned back in his chair, grinning. You're gonna like this, he said, sliding a folder toward me. I picked it up, flipping it open. My eyes scanned the first few lines before I let out a low whistle. Stratos Tech was officially looking for a buyer. Victor stepping down was the last straw, Jonas explained. Their board knows they're screwed. They're hemorrhaging money, and investors are fleeing. I nodded slowly, absorbing the reality of what was happening. Titan Dynamics was about to acquire Stratos Tech at a fraction of its former value. Here's the best part, Jonas continued, tapping the folder. They want you in on the deal. They're offering you full control of what's left of their predictive analytics department, assuming we go through with the acquisition. I chuckled. They're handing me the ruins of what they stole from me? Jonas smirked. Karma's a hell of a thing, isn't it? I flipped through the documents, my mind processing the full circle moment I was living. Stratos Tech had betrayed me, fired me, replaced me, and now they were handing me the keys to what was left of their empire. I exhaled, setting the folder down. So, when do we pull the trigger? Jonas leaned forward, eyes gleaming. End of the week. 3 p.m., Derek's breakdown. Across the city, in the remains of what had once been his office, Derek sat at his desk, staring at the latest financial reports. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his normally perfect hair a mess. He had lost everything. The power, the position. The future he had so arrogantly assumed was his. And now, the company he had backstabbed his way to control was about to be sold off. Derek buried his face in his hands. This wasn't supposed to happen, but it had. Because of me. Because he had underestimated the wrong person. 6 p.m., the toast to the end. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my penthouse, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching the sunset over the city. Titan Dynamics had done the impossible. They had turned my personal revenge into a business strategy. Stratos Tech would soon be nothing more than a name on a list of companies that made terrible decisions. And me? I had won. No more Isla. No more Derek. No more looking over my shoulder, wondering if my work would be stolen. I had built something, and I had taken it with me. I raised my glass to the skyline, whispering, to the ones who never saw it coming. Then I drank, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The day Titan Dynamics finalized its acquisition of Stratos Tech, I was sitting in my new office, sipping coffee, and watching history unfold. The deal had been in the works for weeks, but today, it became official. Stratos Tech, once an industry titan, was now nothing more than a subsidiary under Titan Dynamics control, a shadow of what it had once been. And the irony? I was now the man in charge of the very division they had tried to steal from me. The press was eating it up. Stratos Tech acquired in stunning turn of events. Titan Dynamics names Liam Carter as head of Predictive Analytics Division. The man they fired is now their boss. The headlines weren't just business news. They were poetic justice in print. And I was about to deliver the final blow. 10 a.m., walking back into Stratos Tech. I stepped through the front doors of the Stratos Tech headquarters, the same building where I had been humiliated and thrown out. But today, I wasn't here as an outcast. Today, I walked through the halls as a man who owned the place. The whispers started immediately. Employees who had once avoided eye contact with me after my firing were now staring outright. Some looked nervous, others shocked, and a few, the ones who had stayed loyal to me, even in silence, nodded in respect. I made my way to the main conference room, where the new leadership meeting was about to begin, and I knew exactly who would be there. 10:15 a.m., the final showdown. I pushed open the doors and stepped inside. Seated at the long mahogany table were the remaining executives, department heads, and legal advisors, those who had survived the collapse. And at the far end of the table, Derek, or rather, what was left of him. Gone was the arrogant, cocky man who had once grinned at me across this very table, believing he had won. In his place sat a defeated shell, eyes bloodshot, posture slouched, hands twitching. The weight of his failure was pressing down on him, and for the first time, he truly looked powerless. I took my seat at the head of the table, the same seat Victor Langston once occupied, and let the silence stretch. The tension in the room was palpable. Then I leaned back, exhaling slowly, and finally broke the silence. Let's talk about what's next. Derek flinched at the sound of my voice, but he said nothing. He knew. He knew his fate was no longer in his hands. One of the senior executives, a man named Marshall Graves, cleared his throat nervously. Liam, we just want to say. I raised a hand. Stop. He fell silent immediately. I turned to Derek, taking my time, letting the moment sink in before I spoke. You tried to erase me, I said, my voice calm measured. You sat across from me in this very room, thinking you had won. You thought you could take my work, my career, and my name, like I was nothing. Derek swallowed, but he still didn't speak. I smiled. How did that work out for you? The silence in the room was deafening. Derek opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had nothing left to say. I turned to the legal team. His contract. One of the lawyers quickly handed me a folder. As of this morning, his employment has been terminated. I flipped open the document, barely skimming it before sliding it across the table to Derek. You're done, I said simply. You have 1 hour to clear out your office. He sat there, frozen, his jaw clenching as his eyes darted around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to back him up. But no one spoke. No one defended him. No one was on his side anymore. This was the moment Derek realized he was utterly alone. His breathing turned shallow, his face paling. Liam, please. I shook my head. We're done here. For the first time, he looked like he understood what true loss felt like. Without another word, he pushed back from the table, stood up, and walked out. And just like that, he was gone. 11:30 a.m. The final nail in the coffin. With Derek officially out, the last loose end was Isla. I didn't expect to hear from her again, but as I walked out of the conference room, my phone buzzed with a notification. Voicemail from Isla. I hesitated for a moment before pressing play. Her voice came through, small, weak, and filled with something I had never heard from her before, actual regret. Liam, I don't know where to start. I know you don't owe me anything, but I lost everything. You were right. About everything. I thought I was making the right choices. I thought Derek was. She choked on a breath. I was stupid. I just wanted more, and now I have nothing. No job. No money. No future. I don't even have him anymore. A long pause. Then, barely a whisper. Do you ever think we could start over? I let the message play out, but I already knew my answer. I deleted it. She wasn't worth my time anymore. 6 p.m., the celebration. That evening, I sat in a private rooftop lounge, a glass of whiskey in my hand as I watched the city skyline. Jonas raised his own glass, smirking. You did it. I exhaled slowly, letting the words sink in. Yeah, I did. Stratos Tech was mine now. The company that had tried to erase me had become part of my empire. Isla, gone. Derek? Nothing but a footnote in a cautionary tale. I lifted my glass, smirking. To the ones who thought I was replaceable. Jonas chuckled, clinking his glass against mine. And to the ones who never saw it coming. I took a slow sip, the warmth of the whiskey settling deep in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. No bitterness. No anger. Just a future that was completely mine to build. And the best part? This was just the beginning. The first morning after Stratos Tech's official acquisition felt different. Not in a jarring way, but in a way that reminded me of standing at the edge of something vast and new. The past few months had been a relentless storm, betrayal, revenge, and rebuilding. Now, the dust had settled, and I had won. I walked into the Titan Dynamics building, now the new headquarters of Stratos Tech's predictive analytics division, and was immediately greeted with nods of respect, murmurs of approval. The employees who had once whispered behind my back, who had distanced themselves when I was thrown out, were now seeing me in a new light. I had not only survived, I had come back as their boss. I didn't need their validation, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel damn satisfying. As I stepped into my office, my phone buzzed. A message from Jonas Caldwell. Boardroom in 10. Time to seal the last deal. I already knew what it was about. The final phase of the takeover. This wasn't just about controlling Stratos Tech. It was about burying its old regime completely. I straightened my tie, smirking to myself. Time to close the book. 10 a.m., the last boardroom meeting. The meeting was set in one of Titan's sleek new boardrooms, where the remaining Stratos Tech executives had been summoned. I walked in and took my seat at the head of the table, a place that once belonged to Victor Langston, then Isla and Derek, and now me. Jonas sat beside me, flipping through a stack of documents while the executives looked around nervously. Some of them had sided with Derek. Some had stayed neutral. And some had quietly reached out to me the moment they realized he was failing. Jonas leaned back, looking at them like a wolf surveying a dying pack of sheep. Let's get this over with, he said casually. I folded my hands on the table, scanning their faces before speaking. As of today, Stratos Tech is officially absorbed into Titan Dynamics. That means two things. First, we will restructure every major department to align with Titan's goals. I let my words settle before continuing. And second, I slid a folder across the table. Anyone who had a hand in my removal, in sabotaging my work, or in backing Derek, will not be coming along for the ride. A ripple of tension passed through the room. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others looked straight at their hands, realizing what was happening. Jonas flipped open the folder and began reading names. One by one, the faces around me fell apart as their fates were announced. Some were being fired immediately. Some were being demoted to positions far beneath what they once held. Some were being transitioned out over the next few months. Company speak for clean out your desk before we make you irrelevant. Derek was gone. Isla was gone. But now, the rest of the rot was being cut out, too. And by the end of the meeting, Stratos Tech's old leadership had been completely wiped out. I stood, buttoning my jacket. Thank you for your time, I said, just as they had dismissed me in that cold, soulless conference room months ago. I walked out, leaving them to sit in the ruins of their own making. 12 p.m., the final message. Back in my office, I checked my phone. A notification flashed across the screen. A text from Isla. I hesitated before opening it. I heard what happened at the board meeting today. I guess it's really over now. I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether to respond. Then, a second text came through. I know I can't undo what I did. I know I was cruel and selfish and wrong, but I don't know how to move forward from this. I lost everything, Liam. And for the first time, I don't have a plan. I exhaled, setting my phone down on my desk. She was lost, completely adrift in the wreckage of her own ambition. Once, that might have meant something to me, but now, it didn't. I picked up my phone and typed one final response. That's not my problem anymore. Then, I deleted her number for the last time. No more second chances. No more history tying me to her. I was done. 6 p.m., a toast to the future. That evening, I sat on the private balcony of my new penthouse, whiskey in hand, staring out at the city I had conquered. The skyline stretched before me, a testament to the world that I had reclaimed on my own terms. Jonas leaned against the railing beside me, raising his glass. So, how does it feel? I took a sip before answering. Like the end of one story and the beginning of another. He chuckled. Damn right it is. And let's be real, you're just getting started. I smirked. Derek thought he was a shark. Turns out, he was just a minnow swimming with the real predators. Jonas laughed, shaking his head. And Isla? I shrugged. She got what she wanted, didn't she? He raised an eyebrow. She wanted a future without me. I continued. Now she has it. Jonas nodded, clinking his glass against mine. To the ones who thought they could bury us. I smirked, raising my glass. And to the ones who never saw it coming. We drank, the warmth of victory settling deep in my chest. And as I looked out over the city, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning.